Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. On behalf of BEBA, I would like to welcome you all to this webinar organized by BEBA and the EBCC as part of the Egypt Week virtual business mission. Our distinguished speaker today is His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Maait, Minister of Finance of Egypt. The session will discuss how the financial sector can serve the long-term needs of an inclusive, environmentally sustainable economy. This is particularly relevant as Egypt recently issued its first green bonds, the first in the MENA region. Dr. Maait is no stranger to BEBA and is a frequent leader of our previous business missions to the UK. We would like to welcome him with us today, as we always do. This webinar will be moderated by Helmy Ghazi, Managing Director, Head of Global Banking, HSBC Egypt, and Karim Helal, Managing Director, Corporate Finance and Investor Relations, Carbon Holdings. I'd like to thank HSBC for sponsoring this webinar. I would also like to thank the Egypt Week sponsors for their support. Benya Holdings, EFG Hermes, HSBC Bank Egypt, SAP. Without further ado, I will leave the floor to the moderators and to His Excellency, and welcome.
Right, thank you, Khalid. Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, to this virtual edition. I think it's the second virtual edition of the Egypt Week. Our speaker, as Engineer Khalid mentioned, is His Excellency Dr. Maait. He is very well known to most of us, I think, having presented his views several times on this platform. Dr. Maait is, well, he has been navigating safely the finances of the country during one tsunami after another, very skillfully, we have to say. And now we are bracing ourselves, as I'm sure would like to hear what His Excellency will have to say, getting ready for what appears to be a even more vicious second wave of COVID-19. So I would like to invite His Excellency Dr. Maait to share with us some comments that he has prepared specifically for this audience. Dr. Maait, please. The floor is all yours, or the screen is all yours, rather.
It's the same floor and screen. So let me thank you very much, Engineer Khalid and Mr. Karim, Mr. Helmy. Always happy to be with you and to share BEBA activities. It's really an honor for me to be with you today. And let me, I have a written speech. Let me start with it. Let me say, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the British Egyptian Business Association for inviting me and organizing this conference, despite the difficulties we face because of COVID-19 pandemic. First, I would like to highlight the importance of the green economy to achieve a more inclusive and sustainable economic development. The Egyptian government is keen on attracting green investment to finance environmentally friendly and socially responsible projects for the well-being and sustainability of our economy. Also, it is a priority for Egypt in 2030 vision going forward to be in line with the UN SDGs in its social, economic, and environmental dimension. The government has been supporting green projects like BEBA Solar Park. It also approved 691 green projects for the fiscal year 2021, allocated 36.7 billion Egyptian pounds for green investment in the assets budget of 2021. With that being said, the Ministry of Finance would like to celebrate its milestone by being the first MENA sovereign to issue green bonds despite the difficulties the world is going through. Let me share with you the results of our first green bond issuance. The issuance amounted to $750 million. High quality order book peaked above $3 billion, achieving more than 5 times over subscription. There was a diverse pool of investors from different regions, including Asia, Europe, MENA, and North America. The Ministry of Finance was able to achieve the lowest 5-year coupon for Egypt ever, and the second lowest US coupon for Egypt since 2016. The investor engagement was highly effective. 56% of the investors that participated in the calls placed orders of a total of $970 million. We successfully grew our investors base by adding 16 new first-time investors in our US bond issuance. The Ministry of Finance is always looking forward to increase its pool of investors, increasing the diversity of its portfolio and tapping into new markets. Our team is eagerly working on issuing the first green sukuk by Amina Sovra. We are currently working on updating the law governing sukuk, which has been approved by the cabinet 1 week ago, and we hope that will then be passed by the parliament, hopefully by February 2021. To conclude, the Egyptian government is devoted to continue the commitment and believe it's our social responsibility to head to a more sustainable and environmentally friendly economic path. We are always looking forward to advance British interest in Egypt, and I am glad to always be involved with BEBA to use a platform to share ideas and create new collaboration opportunities between Egypt and UK. I would like to thank everyone for their attention, and I wish you all a fruitful and pleasant day ahead. This is a written statement, speech, but let me quickly also add to you some information about the current situation with Egypt. As it was mentioned that we're still going through the earthquake, the COVID-19. And let me say that what we are concentrating on is to ensure that we will be able to continue observing all the shocks of the earthquakes and all its negative effect on our economy. We believe that we were able to do that. Let me give you very quickly a summary of the financial year finished on 30th of June 2020, and also I can give you the result of the first 4 months of the performance of the current budget. For the financial year 2021, which finished on June 30th of this year, we were able to achieve a decline in our overall deficit from 8.2 the year before to 7.9. And by the way, we were before the COVID-19, we were planning to achieve the 7.2, and all the results until end of February were showing that we will achieve 7.2. But as a result of COVID-19, our GDP growth, which was planned to be 6%, shrank to what we have achieved of 3.6%. Let me say and stress that Egypt is the only country in the region and one of 2-3 countries in Africa which were able to achieve a positive GDP growth. And we achieved something which we are proud about it in these circumstances of 3.6%, although all the estimates of the international financial institutions that we will achieve only 2 at maximum. So we were saying, no, we will be able to achieve around 3.8. We successfully finished 3.8 compared to what it was planned of 6%. With the 6%, definitely we were heading to achieve an overall deficit of 7.2%. However, we achieved still a decline in our overall deficit from the year before of 8.2 to this year 7.9%. Let me say that we had to take some actions, like, for example, increase investment. We decided in the month of May to go to the parliament, ask for spending more on investment. We said this is important to give our workers and our contractors more money to spend. And this also affected the expenditure and the overall deficit. If we look at the primary, we were planning 2%. And definitely 100%, we were going to achieve the 2% and even more. However, because of the more spending on the investing more 10 billion pounds, we got the parliament approval to invest more 10 billion Egyptian pound. This resulted that we achieved 1.8. Our primary surplus was 1.8 of GDP, which was roughly 106 billion Egyptian pound, even more than the year before. The year before was 103 billion Egyptian pound. If you take into account the additional 10 billion we spent it, you can imagine without it, we would have achieved 116 billion Egyptian pound primary surplus, which was more even than 2%. Looking at the level of debt, last year, the year before, we finished with 90.4. The debt to GDP was 90.4. This year of 2019, 2020, we were planning to finish 83%. And unfortunately, because of the shrinking of our GDP, and we had to spend more, we finished with 87.1%. It's achieved something which we are proud about it, that we were able to achieve a decline in our debt to GDP from 90.4 the year before to 87.1 the year 2019-2020. Yes, we had to address the COVID-19 negative effect, which resulted in a sharp decline in our revenue from tourism, from exports, from trade, and affected some revenue of Suez Canal, some of remittances, and we had to replace these sources by getting financial support from the IMF. We received $4.8 billion from the IMF. We went to the international market and issued a Eurobond of $5 billion, and we got also $2 billion from a group of international banks. All of these, of course, affected us from the internal debt because it's an addition to our external debt, our foreign debt. So this, yes, was one of the negative effects that we had to replace what we lost with the tourism sector and other sectors. So this is what we have finished with the financial year 2019-2020, which finished on 3rd of June. If we would like to, I personally would like to give you the last recent results, which finished 31st of October, last week. We achieved an increase of our total revenue by around more than 18%, compared to of the same period of last year. Our tax revenue also increased by 13.4% compared to the same period of last year. Our overall deficit this 4 months, which about 2.6% compared of last year, which about 3.1%. We achieved a small amount of primary surplus, around 5 billion, compared to last year was around 16 billion, but still achieving a primary surplus. So we are also, and let me stress, very proud to achieve all these remarkable results as the first 4 months of our budget compared to last year when we had no COVID and no negative effect of COVID. We hope that in the coming months, we will be able to get a vaccine and return to normality, relative normality, in order to reduce the negative effect of COVID-19. However, if there is a second wave, and touch wood, Egypt until now doesn't have a second wave, but if there is a second wave, we are ready to address it. We have resources, we have reserves, and this was allocated in March because this was in the discussion for the budget. We were asked by the president to allocate a good amount of reserve, just if there is a second wave, and we have to interfere and allocate more money. This is what I would like to mention, and I thank you for listening and leave the floor for Mr. Karim again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. As always, very insightful and very transparent. Helmy, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this comprehensive overview on the green bond and Egyptian economy post-COVID. You know, we at HSBC, we see the transition to a low-carbon, sustainable future represents one of the biggest opportunities, but also risks for the global economy, for Egypt, and society at large. We recently actually set out an ambitious plan to prioritize financing and investment that supports the transition to a net zero global economy, and which helps to build a thriving, resilient future for society and business. You know, at the heart of this plan is a pledge to reduce financial emissions from our portfolio of customers that's across the globe to net zero by 2050 or sooner if it's possible. That's in line with the goals of the Paris Agreement. So I think that COVID-19 has been, you know, a wake-up call for all of us. It accelerated this transformation, and it has rightly focused our attention on the actions we all need to take to build a more resilient economy and create a safer and sustainable world. You know, actually around 85% of the businesses we speak to see environmental sustainability as a priority. And I think, you know, Egypt's commitment to become a leader in green development, commitment to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, as you mentioned, and really setting an example in the MENA region is really all very impressive. You know, the entry of Egypt in the green bond market and establishing a market precedent and encouraging the private sector actually to start using sustainable finance instruments are also really great achievements. You know, having had the chance to work with His Excellency and the Ministry of Finance team and other Egyptian ministries on the structuring of the Egypt's first green bond, I can only but congratulate, you know, everyone for the dedication and team effort to make it all happen. So, Your Excellency, now we will move to the Q&A session. We are receiving a lot of questions from the attendees. And as a reminder to everyone, you can still send more questions by using the Q&A function. And if I can move to the first question, Your Excellency, you mentioned that you mentioned GDP growth and that Egypt, you know, by many international institutions is seen as one of the very few countries actually globally that is expected to see a GDP growth in the coming year as well. So the question is where do you see that growth coming from? Which sectors, industries actually are really driving that growth? And also, what is approximately the contribution of the private and public sector in that growth?
Thank you, Mr. Helmy. And let me start by thanking you personally and HSBC of being our partner in the green bond issuance. And we enjoyed really that you supported us on that, because it was our first time to go through this experience. So I would like to thank you in person and HSBC on that. Our expectation for GDP in this financial year 2021 is to be around 2.8 to 3.5. This is our estimate for GDP growth this year. Which sectors? I believe we have some promising sectors which we are concentrating on. Number one, construction sector. I believe this sector is still giving us a good outcome. Oil and gas is still performing very well. I believe agriculture also started to be a sector which we will concentrate more and more on it, because we think that we have a good opportunity internally and externally. We see the Egyptian agriculture exports is performing good. Also, some other sectors like, let me say, industries, some industries is doing also well. I would say, for example, pharmaceutical doing well, IT doing very well. So we have many promising sectors which we believe that can contribute good to the GDP growth. Let me say that we also intentionally have been given more liquidity to our people and to the companies. I give you example. This year we are going to give in total in pension, I always say something like around 66 billion Egyptian pound increases in pension payment. Let me correct it and say it will be close to 100 billion if I add also, or less than that, all the different type of pension. Because when I say 66, I always think about one type of pension, which is the one managed by our National Organization for Pension. But we have other sectors which also through the budget we support for pension. And let me say this is roughly in total 100 billion increases in different types of pension. This is one. Also, let me say that we have also around 35 billion increases in salaries. This is another item. Given that we increased the personal tax allowance from 15,000 pounds to 24,000 pounds, 60% increase, and also reducing the tax rate 10% to become 2.5, 15 to become 10, and all of that will give also a chance for people to have more money to spend. Also, with giving more and more money to companies and export support or export
the subsidies.
Subsidy. This also will be an element to inject liquidity to companies. So what I want to say is to ensure that consumption in the country will be still working and performing. So this is what I want to say regarding the growth. I believe that financial international institution, they believe that we will be able to achieve this range of 2.8 to 3.5%.
Wonderful news. Your Excellency, if I may, I have one question from the audience, which has just come through. It's from Mahmoud Sirki, and he is asking, what are the Ministry's views on the upcoming Euro clearability of government debt securities? That's one part, and the other part, and related tax treatment for non-residents. Euroclear for government debt securities and the tax treatment for non-residents.
Okay. I think there were some procedures or some requirements, like issuing the law, which has been issued, like the company which will take the responsibility, and also others. Our target now is September 2021 to see our debt euro credible, and I believe that if it is not September, it will be November. But so we are moving to have the government debt to be euro clearable between September and November. This is one. Second one,
the taxes for non-residents.
I think we have exempted them.
For the foreigners, if you don't mind, we already cancelled or removed the capital gain tax for the foreigners for the treasury bills and treasury bonds.
Thank you very much.
Law number 199, the year 20.
Okay, thank you.
They are already exempted now.
There is another question. What is the expected size of the green sukuk that His Excellency mentioned? This is a question from Atif Hassan.
I have to be honest with you, we haven't thought about it, because in order to decide on the size, timing, and all the related issues, it has to be first the law approved by the parliament, which we are waiting for that, because what we have got is a draft law which has been approved by the cabinet last week. So the second is to have it approved by the parliament, which our expectation to be February. From now until the law is approved, we will be in contact with all our partners who will be interested to be with us in preparing ourselves to be ready for issuing sukuk, whether sukuk or green sukuk. I believe this is the period from now until February, March. Until now, from now until February or March, we can, in the preparation, consult what is the market, what is the acceptable size. Let me say, when we went to the market in May, we issued traditional $5 billion US dollar euro bonds. But when we decided about green, we were advised to go for only $500 million. All the advices don't exceed this amount, $500 million, because the market size is small. But when we went to the market and we found that around $3.8 billion subscription, we were advised by our partners that we have a possibility to go up from $500 million to $750 million. So again, in order to decide on the size, on the time, on whether normal sukuk or green sukuk, this will be the process from now until February or March.
Thank you, Your Excellency. If I move on to the next question, is on first congratulating the Ministry of Finance on the Standard & Poor's maintaining the credit rating just recently, whilst many other countries around the world are being downgraded. So the question is, what were the key takeaways and consideration from this announcement by Standard & Poor's?
Let me say that in these difficult times, when you hear good news, you get more feeling that's a normal time. I believe keeping the rate, the sovereign rate of Egypt at normal time, it won't make us happy. But in this particular time, no, we feel we are happy, particularly when we know that we are the only country in the Middle East and Africa. And this was announced by, I think, JP Morgan. They told us that we are the only country in Africa and the Middle East to keep both, to keep the rate and the outlook. We did not expose to downgrading in either. So this will, it makes us happy, but also we have to be very honest with ourselves that we have a lot of work to do in order to, number one, ensure that we will be able to be on the move for upgrading, not just to keep the same grade or to be downgraded. I believe we read all the statements issued by the rating agencies about what are the weakness points, what are the strength points, and all of that, in order to update our strategies, in order to prepare ourselves to be in a position to have ourselves upgraded in the next review. We have challenges. We have challenges about our debt, about our external debt. We have challenges to ensure that our growth, economic growth, will continue and it will be sustained and it will continue on a good path. We have challenges to attract more FDIs, and we have challenges also to ensure that our stability on all aspects, physical, monetary, politics, and security, to have stability which can ensure that we are in a good position to move forward and to have more chances to upgrade. But for the time being, and to be the only country in the region, Middle East and in Africa, to keep its rate and outlook, this makes us very happy.
Karim?
Thank you.
Yes, we have one more question. Another question is basically asking, what are the expectations of the success of the new financial inclusion on the parallel economy and the probability of the disappearance of COVID-19 within the next 3 to 6 months? This is a question from Dr. Taha Khalid of BDO Egypt.
Let me say that for the parallel economy or the informal economy, let me put it in this way. We have to try. We have to try. Why I'm saying we have to try? I'm not saying we're going to do it, we're going to success, we're going to, no. We have to try and try very strongly, because this parallel economy and this informal economy has been built for 70, 80 years now, and it will not disappear overnight. But you have to move, and you have to take steps to at least to reduce its size in our economy. The first thing, everybody was telling us, oh, you have to issue a law for small, medium enterprises and to attract the informal sector and give incentives and blah, 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 blah. We issued the law a few weeks ago, and the law has a lot of incentives: tax, customs, finance, a lot of incentives, and amnesty about any past taxes or custom or any duties. No tax inspections. Just tell us what is your turnover. It's a specified amount. If your turnover, business turnover is 250,000, you will pay only £1,000 a year. If your turnover is 1 million, you will pay, I think, £3,000 a year. No tax inspection, nothing at all. And you will get cheap finance. You will get exempted from custom duties, tariff, and everything. So we started by the law because everybody was telling us, you have to make a law, but the law has no guarantee at all to succeed. The successful on the ground is to ensure that people will be convinced. People will say, oh, we've got a lot of benefit if we become informal, if we be part of the, our economy. And people will not do that unless they believe and the trust is built between the people and the government, particularly when they deal with the officials, with the different authorities, particularly local authorities. If they feel, yes, we are not getting headache of all of that and will be easy and will be formal without headache, without problems, without everybody coming above our heads and say, oh, I'm the tax inspector, I'm the social insurance inspector, I am the council inspector, they would say, no, go away. I would like to continue in the informal. We have to be realistic with our problems and put a realistic solution on the ground. If we do that, we can succeed. So I believe we started with the law issue. Currently, our people is working on the executive regulations. And we have to go for a huge marketing about this law, about all the incentives, and try to convince the people by a good marketing campaign, and also about a good application on the ground that people convinced by this application that from their benefit and their interest to be part of the informal. I will say, I'm thinking that this will need a lot of effort, and also it will need time, but we have to move. And if we succeed, this will reduce gradually the parallel economy. Is this the only question?
Yes, thank you very much. I think this really is the perfect answer, Your Excellency, because as you correctly said, this business of the informal economy is a 70-80-year legacy that was over time eroding the trust, which led us to where we are today. So you're quite right. It's about gaining back the trust, and that will take time and will take a big effort in creating awareness. Thank you very much for that. Another question is just a quick one. Do you think, or do you see the 1% COVID-related tax staying for the foreseeable future?
Okay. Let me say that you asked me about what I think about COVID-19. I was optimistic that by end of December this year, COVID-19 will be over. But it seems that my estimate was not correct. And we have to continue with this situation for some more months in the year 2021. COVID-19 is giving a very negative effect. And as I said, more than 200 billion Egyptian pounds were lost in the last 4 months of the financial year 2019-2020, from, let me say, February until June. More than 200 billion Egyptian pounds were lost. And we had to spend more on some issues. So if we continue like that, it means that we will be negatively affected. Egypt is one of the countries which depend hugely on the tax revenue as a huge percent and significant percent of total revenue. 75% of our total revenue is tax revenue. So if our economy is not performing at something which we are hoping for above 60% and going with 60% plus or minus, so our revenue definitely is reduced significantly. At the same time, most of our expenditure items are must. Salaries, debt service, pension, national security. So again, from where we can get that? So what we decided is to create a fund and deduct 1% from people's salary to put it in this fund. It's not a treasury revenue. It is an emergency fund. Okay, I'm not going to add this money to our revenue. It will be an emergency fund. If we are hit with another pandemic like COVID or something, we can use this money. The law says 12 months. If the parliament decided something else after the 12 months, it's up to the parliament. Because eventually we as a government, we introduce the draft law to the parliament and we discuss it. So if they decided that it will be just 12 months as it was, it is 12 months. If they agree that the situation requires that we add additional period, it depends on how things will evolve. For the time being, we thought, alhamdulillah, we don't have the second wave until now. And our economy is performing at least partially. So what about if we are hit strongly by another second wave, which will, force us to lock down at least partially? This will be a disaster. So hopefully this will not happen, and we will not need to continue with the 1% deducted from people's salary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Helmy, do you want to take over?
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your patience. We're asking you a lot of questions. Staying with the taxes. So the question is that the Egyptian Tax Authority has taken a brave decision to adopt the electronic invoicing for 134 companies through the Large Taxpayer Center. And the question is, what are the plans and next steps on further expanding this to the rest of the large taxpayers? So basically electronic invoicing of taxes. That's the first question. The second one, which is also related, when will the executive regulations of the Unified Tax Procedures Law issue?
For the first question, yes, next week will be the date for the electronic invoice, which will start with 134 companies, big companies. But our plan is by 6th of June, around 3,000 big companies, the biggest companies, which all in the Center for Big Business, Marcus Kbar. This will be included in the electronic invoice. So this is the plan. The 3,000 big companies will be in this system by 6th of June, 2021. And after that, we will continue to the others after 6th of June. But the main bulk, which is Center for the Marcus Kbar, will be covered totally by 6th of June. And this represents around 75–80% of our collected tax revenue. After 6th of June, we'll continue for the other companies, which will represent 25% of our total tax revenue. But the good news is that we are now in the final stage also to move to electronic receipts. So hopefully by end of December, next month, beginning of January, we will start a new project for electronic receipt, B2C. And this will be also a very significant project. By the way, for the core business, the electronic system for the core business will start also end of next month for the full automation of all tax procedures, which IPM and SAP now is in a good stage. This will be also by the end of next month, December. So as an electronic electronic system for the electronic invoice, for electronic receipt, for the core business, all of these will be by June 2021 will be in place, at least partially. I think the second question was about
the executive regulations of the Unified.
Executive regulation. They are working recently on the executive regulation. I think the law gave us 6 months. What I promise you, before the end of 6 months, we will have the executive regulation for the law.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Karim?
Yes. One question regarding, it's actually not from anybody in particular, it just comes to my mind, but I think it's on most people's minds. Since May of this year, about $10 billion of local currency debt instruments were snapped by foreign investors, which obviously was quite useful in stemming the outflow of the previous period. Do you think this trend will continue will stabilize, will increase, will decrease in the coming months? Because obviously it has an impact on our foreign currency position.
Because I lost some words, but let me say that I can get the overall question by we moved in 2 stages. From March 2020 until, let me say, beginning of July, we have definitely more than $10 billion, we've talked about that, left the country. And more than that, significantly. And we were able to cope with that. And everyone moved freely, and there was no problem. And we were able to manage all of that. But let me say, after and from July 2020, people or the investors started to come back again. And now we have more than $20 billion the foreign participation on our local debt. So the move now is in, not out, and significantly in. Investors, I believe, making good return on their investment in local debt, very good return, one of the highest in the world. This is number one. Number two, I believe they trust us because they started to invest in bonds beside bills, because normally they used to invest heavily in treasury bills rather than bonds. But now we see them coming to invest in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years treasury bonds. And I leave Mr. Mohamed Ghazi, if you would like to add anything to this question.
Okay, thank you, Your Excellency. Due to the COVID-19, our foreigner outstanding in domestic treasuries and T-bonds and T-bills declining from $27 billion to almost around $13 billion US. That coming from the pandemic effect, the global pandemic effect. And once we open again the markets, maybe from the last week, from June 2020, we're starting to see again a good investment coming from foreigners, starting with T-bills in the beginning, and then moved to the treasury bonds. We can see now a good money coming for the different tenors for T-bonds till 10 years investment, and it's will affect positively on their outstanding with us. On now the outstanding for the foreigners exceeding 21 USD billions, and it's reflecting many positive points for the exit scenario that they do and that they did in March will be a very good exit scenario for the investors, and there was not any problem for sell their position. Another point, the stability, our credit rating and our strong economy that's pushed them to invest again and in treasury. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think, Your Excellency, I think the really positive thing from this change in the maturity structure is more money is going into the long dates, and I think this has not happened a lot before, and that I believe is a great signal, not only in our credit, in our policy, but also it reflects well on how people see the outlook in terms of the exchange rate. So that's really great work. I have one question, if I may. It's from Mohamed Khalid, and he is, well, first of all, he's thanking you for a very informative and transparent update. And he is making the comment that while the ministry has reduced the dividend tax for shareholders on listed companies to 5%, he is commenting that there is an increase in the dividend tax of shareholders of closed companies. And he is basically saying that this may send the signal that closed companies are basically paying for the incentive given to the stock market shareholders. So this is one part of the question. And the second part of the question is asking if we will see group taxation applied in Egypt to encourage family businesses to start creating group structures. 2 comments are required from Your Excellency.
I believe the answer for the first one is we reduce dividend tax for only listed companies, not for unlisted. And this was because of the market demand, the stock market demand, to encourage more listed companies. So we reduced from 10% to 5% only for the listed companies, and we'll see whether this was an encouraging point for more companies to be listed in the stock market. This is my answer to the first question. For the second question, please repeat it again, Mr. Karim.
The second question is asking if Your Excellency is planning to introduce group taxation applied to the Egyptian economy to encourage family businesses to start creating group structures like formal structures.
I have to be honest with you, we haven't thought about it. However, we can, study this idea and see if this can help. I will be happy to see how can we do. The only thing which I always worry about is when you introduce a system, sometimes this system is, misused or result in some sort of unfairness treatment and or reduce some negative effect or something. This is one. The second one is the legal issue. Whether if we do that is legal or not. Legal, I mean by that, is constitutional or not unconstitutional. Because sometimes you say, oh, we can do that, this is fine. When you go for the legal people, they say, oh, you can't do that. This is unconstitutional. And this will be cancelled by the Supreme Constitutional Court.
Court. Okay. Understood. Thank you, Your Excellency. Helmy?
Yeah, so one of the reality, Your Excellency, post-COVID is countries having to incur much more debt, whether Egyptian pound or foreign local currency or foreign currency. So the question is, what is Egypt's debt management strategy in general going forward?
When I started, I talked about the earthquake. And this is the earthquake. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yes, yes. The earth is shaking. We can hear you.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm correct. I've heard that debt to GDP in UK was below 80% before COVID-19, and now is around 100% of GDP, plus or minus. I'm not sure, but I've heard something like that. I've heard that last year, the United States of America deficit was below $1 trillion. With COVID-19, budget finished the 3rd of September, they more than 3 trillion, the overall deficit. So why I'm saying these two examples, or what I'm saying that, yes, with COVID-19, with the reduced revenue, most of the finance ministers decided to borrow more, spend more, forget whatever the deficit and whatever the debt levels. I personally said we cannot do that in Egypt. We cannot do that in Egypt. Why? Because we made economic reform which was very harsh, tough, painful for our people. And if we lose the outcome of this economic reform to start a new economic reform after COVID-19, I don't believe that our people will be, able to do that. So I said, let us strike a compromise, strike a balance, okay? So try to spend, but not to lose the results of the economic reform, and try to, overcome the negative effect of the COVID-19 and keep as much as you can the targets on the move. Let me explain it more clearly. Last year, our deficit was 8.2. I mean by last year, 2018, 2019. The 2019, 2020, we were planning to come from 8.2 to 7.2. We thought, oh, we cannot do the 7.2, but not to come back above 8.2. Try to be in the middle, and successfully, we were 7.9. The plan is to continue this year to be below 7.9, not to go above 7.9 or 8.2. The same for debt. Our debt on June 2017, our debt to GDP was 108. We moved down on 6th of June 2018 to 98. And on 6th of June 2019 to 90.4. And planned 6th of June 2020 to be 83. To be 83. So we should not go back to 90 or 91. No, try to, yes, we will not be able to achieve 83, but not to go back above 90 or 91 or 92. So what we achieved, 87.1. We have to continue like that, going below 87.1 to be on the same path. So it is a reduced, but not a turning point. It is reduced, it's down, is reduced, but not a turning point to start again. So this is our plan, our strategy is to try to move on the same direction, not to go to a turning point and to go above again to a higher debt to GDP or a higher deficit or to go back again to primary deficit. No, this is determined. So this is our plan. We will continue doing that because we would like, after the COVID-19, our damage, when we count the damage out of the earthquake, to be a limited damage, which we can manage it for the years to come. I hope that I answered your question, Mr. Helmy.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I mean, you have been very generous with your time. Thank you very much for all the details and explanations. And I think this brings us to the end of this webinar.